Yo, this is Devontae Hines, aka Blood Orange.
This is Andrew Kuo.
Yo, what up? It's your boy Jesus Nice, aka Young Chipotle.
What's up? This is Chris Thompson from Vampire Weekend, and you're listening
to
Cookies.
Cookies is very lit. It's about basketball. Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on vacation. And Andrew Kuo here for our 200th episode. Still takes no days off. Andrew Kuo, how are you doing here on our 200th episode of Cookies Hoops, the world's most influential basketball podcast?
Amazing, man. No one thought we could do it, but we scored 200 points in one game. Just incredible. There's no record of it. No one was there. There's a piece of paper that we can hold up with the number 200 on it, but it happened, and it's legit.
What I like is listening to that intro that featured some of our favorite guests, and I heard Andrew Kuo
Weird.
in the mix. It's almost like your long play, your the long hustle of sidling from frequent guest to a real Cookies hoopster.
I Kuzma the situation. I was just like in every picture, just like, oh, you guys are AD and LeBron talking. I'm just in the corner covering my mouth, not saying anything, pretending.
Who is this diminutive king that keeps creeping up?
What's up, guys? I'm still here. Yeah, I always dreamt of potting every day about arguing about Allen Iverson. Standing for Allen Iverson every day was my dream.
I did that for, I don't know, a decade of my life before this show was even an idea. So this is just a nice throwback to really the best days of my life.
Can you recall, or do you still have some of your best merchandise apparel from that era? I say that because I was top to bottom in Iverson stuff in his prime. Jersey, I had Sixers shorts, obviously. I had the Reeboks. I was excited about Iverson. Did you have the full kit?
I did not buy a lot of sports team merch. I did when I was younger. I lived near a Champion outlet, so they'd give you all the jerseys that were like factory rejects or seconds.
I'm very familiar.
And they were nonsensically cheap. So I had zillions and zillions of basketball jerseys and football jerseys because they'd be like $5, and there would be little tags on them with a pin, and if you only had like $6, you could just move one to the other one that might have cost 10, so you could just sort of get what you wanted for like a $6 jersey. So I had odd ones, like a Mark Schlereth Redskins jersey. Why not?
Those
had a Scottie Pippen Olympic jersey, Kevin Johnson Suns, David Robinson Spurs. I had zillions of basketball jerseys.
I mean, I've somehow held on to all this stuff, but to that point, the stuff I covet the most are like the Seidlers. Like I have an Eddie House Knicks tee that like I cherish, you know? J.R. Smith. I just try to buy the t-shirts at the end of the cubby at MSG, and like those are everyone has an Iverson jersey. It's a top selling jersey of the time. But I wish I had a Schlereth jersey.
Do you have a Kevin Knox jersey?
I have a Kevin Knox tee.
I saw a photo, and there was like
I love
a lot of
Knox.
Alonzo like Trier merch. You might want to strike while the iron is hot.
I mean, it's tough when, I mean, I don't love Trier as much as I love Knox. Frank Smokes, obviously, I got. At a certain point, I have to stop buying T-shirts, but I just can't help it. They're so awesome. They're too awesome to pass up.
Do you ever get rid of them, or are you a hoarder?
I fold them or I roll them, and I put them in those big clothing bags that you can suck the air out of, and they don't take that much space. But it's building up. But like I've let go of my inclination to hoard records, books, and whatever in my life. except T-shirts. I just love them so much.
Is there any jersey that's your grail that you don't have but you want?
Oh, that I don't have?
That you don't have that you want? Is there one that you're like, I'm trying to find this one? I guess you can kind of find whatever you want, right?
Yeah. I'm not a huge jersey guy. I have like a dozen maybe. I love T-shirts more, but my prized possession jersey wise was a original Marcus Camby Raptors jersey. It's awesome.
Those were awesome jerseys too.
So awesome. I have it hanging so I can look at it.
Is that the one that had the dinosaur on the front and like the sort of
dribbling
spiky
dinosaur
thing around the name in the back?
The reverb of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, those were great.
Yeah, so good. I wish I was like a Grizzlies fan because I'd love a big country old school jersey or Damon Stoudemire.
I mean, Stoudemire was a Raptor. If you like the Raptors enough to have a Camby.
Oh well, Camby was one of my favorite players growing up. So my brother gave it to me for Christmas because he was my favorite Knick, and I loved him in Massachusetts. I love the type of player he is. He's a rim protector, baby.
I thought you were more of a Dante Bright man.
It was a weird experience for me because for some reason I just loved the BMM, the Massachusetts team when Camby was on it because I thought he was a really exciting player, and ironically, the Cookies Hoops Classic was played on that court, but in Greenpoint. I think
that was an oddity when we found a location for the tournament. They were just installing the floor, and it happened to be the UMass floor that was put down and then painted black.
Yeah, and it was piecemealed or maybe arranged randomly, like a puzzle. And I kind of had like this weird moment, and the guys who were in charge were just like, "Yeah, it's a UMass court, whatever." I'm like, "Wait, is this the court that Marcus Camby played on?" They're like, "Yeah, probably." I'm like, "Holy shit, I'm having a moment over here." And they're like, "Whatever. No one likes Marcus Camby." I'm like, "What? You claim to be Knicks fans?"
Yeah, Marcus Camby was awesome.
It's fun.
Classic Denver Nugget. Might have won Defensive Player of the Year, or was at least high in the voting.
He had a run in, I believe it was 99. That was incredible. When Patrick Ewing went down with that torn ligament in his hand, and Marcus Camby kind of emerged, and then had that incident where his sister was being held at gunpoint on his driveway by her ex-boyfriend. I think I have that right.
Yeah.
And it killed the whole vibe. Everyone was just sad, and they lost.
He was Defensive Player of the Year in 2007.
No way. I
Marcus
didn't even
Camby,
know that.
as a member of the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah. I mean, I can almost trace my love of players like Anthony Randolph through Marcus Camby.
So what else is new? I know you're excited about the new 6.5 million people who signed up for unemployment. That seems like a lot.
How do you spin this, man?
Like that brings a total of what, 10 million in 2 weeks? That's a lot of people.
I don't know how to spin these numbers, and I find myself backtracking to even this show or some of the thoughts I had when like 3 or 4 weeks ago when I kept on telling myself, we know what's going to happen. It's going to be really bad. Stay calm. Don't freak out. It's going to be awful, and do the best you can. And today I woke up and I was in a little bit of kind of despair, and I had just to remember what I said when like 3 weeks ago.
I had some despair this morning too. Nice.
It's one of those days, man. It's like the 200th episode of Cookies.
Yeah. I got up really early and it was still kind of dark out, so it was a nice like cloaking of despair.
Yep.
You know, like looking out the window now, it's bright, sun is shining, it's windy.
It's beautiful out today.
Yeah, there's stuff going on. But early, you could really embrace the despair. And it was like the unemployment numbers were coming in. People were like, this might last 18 months. Saw something with David Chang being like, this is going to destroy every restaurant. You're like,
He put that out like a week ago. I disagree with that take.
But anyway, it was a nice moment of, whew, everything's really, really fucked. That's really annoying that we are living through this right now. Yeah. So yeah, I had some despair.
Yeah.
Despair.
Yeah. I watch Fox News because I consume so much news that I have to just like find out what people are thinking and talking about. And yesterday kind of set me off in a bad place, and I woke up still in that mindset. I just don't think enough people are taking this seriously or have enough compassion. I know that is like a really bland brown gray statement, but like
It's like the color palette from The Plot Against America.
Yeah, I cannot stay awake during that show. But I just feel like we could really ramp up our urgency and compassion a little bit. And I don't know what form that takes, but I was disheartened a little bit this morning.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, LOL, this is our life now. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, this blows. This is what we're just doing for the next year and a half. Like, God, that is so whack.
I know. It's like,
I'm like, oh yeah, the second wave is going to come back. Like, we're never beating this shit.
no.
This is the rest of our lives. Like, great.
Now, like, your boy Fauci's getting death threats, and I'm like, let scientists do their thing because they are the answer.
Yeah.
Let the nerds be nerds and do not mess this up for everybody.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah.
We are absolutely cooked until we get a vaccine. That's it.
Yep.
We can delay and kick the can
Yeah.
and Ponzi it up. Whatever we want to do, it's just buying time until we get a vaccine.
Yep.
That's it. I just don't believe anything else is going to work.
Get
But,
these.
but I'm despairing today. So maybe tomorrow I'll say, like, it's going to work.
I'm so affected by the things that, I consume, not only with news, but like who I talk to or the opinions that kind of creep into my head from weeks before, years before. But, I tried to reach out to my whole list of friends yesterday, and the morale is low, and I feel like we have to get through this dip a little bit. It sucks. Like, I don't know what to do. This is awful,
Dude,
man.
it's like as trashy as Steve Nash's first 4 years in the league. It is that bad.
It's as bad as Kobe's last few years in LA, man, on the court.
It's as bad as Steve Nash's last 2 years in LA.
It's the opposite of Allen Iverson's career. I don't know. I don't know. I found myself being mad, and we talked about this yesterday. Like, I wish there was some good April Fool's jokes. Like, fuck everybody
yeah.
for like canceling everything.
Yeah, Kuo. Like, if only I could watch somebody get like hit in the head with a hatchet. Oh, that'd be hilarious. April Fools.
I mean, not only are you a salary cop, you're a joke cop now. It's just like, how many cops can you be? How many cop masks can you wear, Ben?
Is that a massive head contusion? Oh, joke's on you, Jack.
No laughing on my watch, Ben Detrick.
You can quote me on that. Well, one thing I've noticed is that I do feel better when I take the time to have a pretty good meal. Breaking up the day with those kind of normalcies, making coffee, going for a little bit of a stroll, recording in 90 freaking minutes every single day, but cooking a nice meal and going through the deliberate process of thinking about it, cooking it, eating it, and not just like shoveling a carton of, a tin of sardines into my face over the sink. It actually does make me feel better. Like last night, I didn't feel like cooking. I just made a smoothie, and I think that contributed to my despair.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think we talked about it earlier. I've lost the will to like dress food up, but I make sure I eat healthy. I'm like turning into my least favorite version of myself. I'm trying to make sure I eat healthy, but eat something indulgent, like a brownie or something, and then working out. I'm furiously trying to work out because it's exhausting, but it helps my brain. And if I don't do it, I'm just like a puddle of just like unconsolable fear.
I got some bad news for you, by the way.
What's up?
The results are in. And according to a poll that the interns put up, it is far more degrading to eat over the sink than it is to eat out of the fridge. I'm sorry you have to learn about it this way, but maybe this can be a wake-up call and you can alter your behavior accordingly.
Right. So people who eat out of the fridge are like Joe Biden, who leads the numbers, and I'm Bernie Sanders, who does things ethically. It's weird how that works out.
I believe one of the commenters made a nice description, and I think they called it, I'm not sure how they phrased it, but they called it like raccoon shit.
Oh, but they called eating out of the fridge raccoon shit.
Or was it eating? I forget what they were doing.
Wow. Fake news. Amazing. Fox
Anyway,
News.
it is clear that eating over the sink is far more degrading. Like, you can't even be bothered to put a plate down. That's what separates man from beast.
Wait, are you using a plate when you eat out of the fridge?
No, but you're not making an extra effort to get it away. You're looking at the fridge. You're eating some olives. Maybe there's something else good in here. What could I cook?
But you're warming up the whole fridge, and you're letting stuff like get warm.
When you go to the sink, you've made a decision.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying I haven't made it.
You've taken something out of the fridge, and now you're eating. You're not grazing or perusing what's in the fridge. Oh, some olives. I'm gonna probably
I thought you were stick to a side guy. I stick to the tin of sardines side. I wanted them, and I didn't even open my fridge. I took it out of the cupboard. But I don't like to let coldness leave the fridge because stuff spoils.
What about a plate? Why would you not eat over a plate?
Because I had to do it quickly.
That's what separates man from beast. Plates.
Well, I had to do that because of beasts, because my cats are very interested in these sardines. And I love my cats, and I hate to see them disappointed. They're too salty for them.
Look, all I'm saying is do better. I have faith in you.
Hey, I'm just saving energy, man. That electricity bill.
What are your cooking resources these days? How are you finding recipes?
For a while I was just recreating my parents' recipes and my mom's recipes, and even my dad, who was an awful cook, but shout out to him. He tried hard, and so I've been recreating his failures, which has been fun. A lot of American cheese on stuff. A lot of like mismatched Asian products with American products, which now I find so charming.
Wasn't that style of ramen viewed as controversial when the New York Times put up the recipe, and then people like yourself were like, no, this is very common. It was like melting a slice of American cheese over instant ramen, and also I think it had an egg in it.
Shout out to Koreans who are kind of instant ramen geniuses. But yeah, that's been going on for a long time.
People were mad when it was on Twitter, and then you set the record straight, if I remember correctly.
Well, I don't believe in authenticity, especially in food. So like my dad would use like white Asian noodles for spaghetti and put American cheese on it. And it was pretty delicious. And I had it the other day. It's really good.
What do you think about swapping semolina noodles in for rice noodles in Asian cuisine?
I want to love it. And I had it yesterday.
I didn't know this.
The taste didn't do it for me, but I love the idea of it. It doesn't work as well to me. There's a conflicting flavor in the semolina.
I did not know you did it. I remember you discussing it, and so I was not trying to
I threw it up on our
information.
group chat.
I'm glad to learn this.
I threw it up on our group chat, our fantasy basketball group chat.
Oh, naturally.
Which has an Asian chef in the building, and he's kind of a lovely guy, but also a cop. Unlike my co-host of Cookies on episode number 200. But he told me his rules for it, and I tried it, and I didn't love the taste. He said it was okay to use semolina noodles for fried noodles, but in noodle soup, it has to be Asian wheat noodles, which is just like flour and water. I didn't love the flavor of the fried soy sauce and semolina.
There you have it.
But
the noodle cop.
I want it. But we got into a heated argument about rice and frying rice. And I claim, every responsible Asian mother would say day-old rice is best to fry. I think you can just manipulate the texture of your rice on the pan or in the wok in real time. So it could be fresh rice. If you undercook rice, you can have fried rice in an hour. You don't have to wait 24 hours. It's arbitrary. It's like getting a short guy to play point guard. You don't need to do that anymore. Or getting a big guy to be a rim protector. Like, you can.
I have no strong opinions on this. I'm just trying to learn from you and your mistakes.
I try to fry rice a lot because I find it as enjoyable as cooking a stew, because there's so much room for you to maneuver. And if the rice is too wet, just keep on cooking it and it'll dry out. Add oil as you need to. Keep it on the heat. It'll work out for you.
So, okay, I believe this, and Cookie's listeners, he might be right. He's not often right, but in this case, he could be. Who's to say?
Right. It's my Clay Thompson of recipes.
So you were telling me that you've been watching a lot of Bon Appetit YouTubes.
Yep.
Because I was trying to lead you in this direction, but you just went off on a tangent about cooking rice and your text wars with rival Asians. What's up with these Bon Appetit videos?
I've been waiting to get into them because I saw Danger. I saw the video game Danger. I'm like, I want this. I'm going to inhabit this, but I can't do it right now because it feels like a whole universe. And last night, I just started kind of from the early videos. And 3 hours later, I was like, I have to go to sleep. It's 5 a.m. It's time to go to sleep.
Are you binge watching Bon Appetit videos as a rewatch?
No, this is the first time.
Do you start from the beginning?
Yeah. No, I want this. This is a part of my life I was looking forward to, sort of like something you're looking forward to cooking or eating. I'm like, this is going to be a big part of my life. I just don't know when. And last night, I just started it. It is as awesome as people have been saying. These people, the crew, the Bon App crew, have been doing like 15 to 20 minute videos about creating fermented things to eat, duplicating junk food from scratch, and baking breads. And it is awesome because these guys are so good at it and likable, and the editing is good and it's funny, and I love everything about it.
I've seen a few of them. They go
good. Viral.
Yeah, they're the ones that are out of the test kitchen, right?
Yep, and then sometimes they go off like to the woods to search for delicious mushrooms, like Anthony Davis and Stats.
Some sort of truffle pig, if you will.
Yeah, or they go to an oyster farm. You know, your classic stuff. And it feels like we've turned over every rock with food exploration, but now it's almost like it's the delivery. And like Brad Leone has a show called It's Alive, and he has a ton of energy, and I find him to be super hilarious. So they're just stars, you know?
One thing that makes me kind of optimistic about food options and the survival of good food options has been some services here in New York have opened up their business to regular Joes, such as ourselves, with the closure of many restaurants. And there's companies like Natura, which delivers organic vegetables, and it used to send it to restaurants, and now they do it individually to people. And there's a couple other ones like Heritage Meat Products. I believe the fish store in Chelsea Piers is now giving wholesale prices to people. And a lot of this is just survival. But it does make me happy to know that this is happening, that you can still get high quality food delivered, in particular if you're afraid to leave your house and you're not bound solely by needing to go to like Key Food or Seatown or whatever the grungy supermarket near your house is. So I think that's a kind of cool thing, that along with some restaurants shifting into delivery mode, which is of course sad in some cases, other ones such as our buddies from Chez Ma Tante are delivering food to hospitals, and same deal with Pies and Thighs. But there are some cool options out there to get like very good quality lamb or a hamburger or fish or charcuterie that are beyond what you could find maybe within walking range.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've heard about that. I have not taken advantage of that yet, but I do love, it's certainly sad, but I do respect that an industry like the food industry that's dealing with such tight clocks adjust faster than everyone. Like, I am very upset with our policymakers, but I wish they would behave more like the food industry, which sees like an issue and immediately identifies it because they have 2 days for a food item that is delicious and has a home written on it, but it just can't sit there. And
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good point. The adaptability of some bars and some restaurants. In the case of the latter, there are some restaurants that have just become wine stores.
yeah,
That's like
awesome.
just what they're doing.
Yep.
Delivering wine, having pickup. There are a couple bars near me that are doing street side alcohol sales.
Yeah,
There's a window open, you walk up, you can buy a beer to go.
Yep.
And that's just how they're staying alive. And when you're looking over there on a nice day, there's a line. And I know you get a little queasy about a line, but
Yeah.
it's somewhat spaced out. And again, I'm not saying it's the best, but it is a semblance of like society.
Mm-hmm.
When you walk out and you see people lined up to grab a drink and then walk down the street. And
yeah.
we know all about the shaming and whatnot, but it's nice to see
Let's
that.
get
And, like,
over it. Yeah.
yesterday I heard like someone playing music really loud, and it made me just remember how still everything has been lately. Where
Yeah.
all you hear is like a siren once in a while because there aren't really cars going by. And to hear music, people were just kind of stopping on the street. I don't know what movie it reminded me of, but people were like literally stopping on the street and looking up at this window because you could hear like classic rock or indie rock or whatever, like echoing kind of from a building. And people were thinking, is someone playing live music? What's happening?
Yeah.
It was weird.
It's so interesting how in situations like this, like people are compelled to like express themselves, whether that be shame or playing music. I was talking to one of my buddies who is safely in Houston, and he was saying like there was a shooting on my street a week ago. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Was it gang related? He's like, no, it was a bunch of kids that's shooting guns in the air. And I'm like, oh, that's tomfoolery for sure. But also I'm like, that's an expression of frustration, you know, like that is a way of the community expressing themselves. And it's interesting to see, right? Like I believe in peer pressure still, like this thing, you know, when our leaders say like it's up to us, it's like, oh, it's up to our peers to pressure ourselves to behave in a communal way. But I'm over shaming people lining up for alcohol because do your thing. Like this is so scary. I don't know how I would express myself if I felt like you. So go for it.
And I will say, I did not see people congregating in a dangerous sense. You know, these places are not letting people inside. They're spaced out about 6 feet apart. Again, not ideal, but it wasn't hazardous in the way of, wait, there's 10 people standing there in a bar.
Yeah.
It was a little better than that. But there was a little incident as I was walking down the street where some guy who was wearing a face mask got into it with a guy on a bike, and I have no idea why, but he's like, you know, S my effing D, just screaming. And I was on the street, like, kind of smiling, like, we're back? Like, there's madness happening?
Yeah.
And the guy was, like, muffled.
Yeah.
Yelling through his mask. And the guy on the bike started videotaping him. He's like, fuck anybody watching this video. Who do you send it to? And I'm like, yes. And then cops pulled up because they were, like, half a block away and just swarmed it. And everyone kind of dispersed. Again, just a little moment of normalcy. Yeah. It's nice.
I got to go out and get groceries today because I'm out. As an Asian person, do you think I should wear a mask or not wear a mask? What is more probable for me just to like remain unseen? Because people are not into Asians wearing masks in public right now. They find it to be like self-serving.
Do what you want. Fuck everyone else, man.
I just don't want.
If you want to
be
wear a
yelled at.
mask, you're not going to get yelled at, I don't think.
Are you sure?
Well, you live close enough to Chinatown
I'm happy for that.
that I do feel like people aren't going to be like, is that an Asian?
Yeah.
It's more like, yo, there's thousands of Asians around here, man.
Yeah. I definitely feel safer being in the proximity of Chinatown. But like, it's interesting to see how people are changing by the hour. Not only in that regard, like, been finding out what the room is talking about. Like, we're all trying to sustain mentally, monetarily, physically, and I saw some clapback on my feeds about people like us, like not specifically us, but promoting podcasts or promoting a product line that they've been working years on that finally dropped, like new albums that have been in the works for months coming out and being like, we're just gonna give this to you guys, we don't know what to do, and like, read the room, like, we're not interested in your music today. But personally, I'm very interested. Have you had any of this kind of like discussion in your brain?
Yeah, of course. Because if we're gonna like put up tweets about basketball and tweets about beat battles, then we're not talking about Corona. We're not talking about serious stuff. So I don't really see the difference between saying, hey, I've got like a new podcast. Hey, here's some new t-shirts. Here's this. But at the same time, we talked about supervillain David Geffen not reading the room and being like, I'm on a yacht. How about you? That's a little different. I think if you're like, hey, it's time to buy this luxury item, that's a little weird. But again, I don't know. It is a little strange.
I have no problems with any of that, for the record.
I'm not really saying I have like a huge problem as much as like the negative feedback is going to flow if you're doing this incorrectly.
For sure.
But I don't know. I don't see a problem with promoting your stuff. It's just, how are you doing it?
Yeah.
Are you doing it awkwardly and in a way that feels self-serving? Yeah. Or are you doing it in a way that it kind of, everyone can acknowledge, like, life has to still go on, even though it's very different right now. And that's just what we're going to be doing for a while. Also, maybe this is going to change, right? In 2 weeks, will it feel different? Or are we still going to be stuck in this sort of like odd, spongy uncertainty in which we don't really want to hear about other things for 18 months? Who knows?
I mean, I'm the whist king, but I think there's no way this thing can take a straight line. And I think there's always going to be people being like, straighten your line. We need to get from A to B. But without, hammering people over the head, I think people who are giving us dance parties or DJ battles or podcasts every day are trying to help. And I think on the surface, it could be like, why are you guys talking about Jay-Z or Mannie Fresh or Scott Storch? There's a pandemic. I'm like, yes, but this is not a straight line. We're trying, Mannie Fresh and Scott Storch are trying to help us get through something. And I find them to be really generous. And I love this stuff. If I didn't care, I would just not look at it.
I agree. And when Cookies Hoops puts out t-shirts or sweatshirts in the very near future, I don't find that objectionable at all. I think they've properly read the room and are just trying to put out some nice products for people to have.
It is not an easy decision to make. I'll just put it that way.
It's true.
It is something that is very much debated and a part of our process. But even doing a pod every day, I mean, I just really love these people who are still on the air. Like, I just really think it's cool, even if they're talking about comedy or food or whatever. It doesn't have to be the news. I just think nothing is a straight line. That's all.
I don't know that there's any rights or wrongs when it comes to behavior because we're in uncharted territory. It's like art, you know it when you see it. And it's going to be in the eye of the beholder. It's subject to interpretation.
Yep.
Like there's no rules right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because in basketball and in everything, like, I love contrarians. Well, not contrarians in an annoying way, but I like people who are like, but what if? And then we can talk about what if. And I understand that in times like this, that's really hard to stomach. Like, we don't want to hear a think piece about like, but what if this is good for us? I'm like, I don't love that, but I'll just ignore it. And people can go off into their own wisp paths. But like, I just don't think, as a community, we have to listen to what people want. But when someone says like, I didn't know what to do, I had these sneakers dropping for months and now they're dropped, so if you guys want them, they're $100. I'm like, fair enough. This is cool enough for me.
I also think that we have to acknowledge the necessity of escapism.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're looking at beat battles, that's what it is. It's temporarily listening to music and avoiding thinking about terrifying thoughts and your anxiety, and just listening to records that you like and hoping that Ellen DeGeneres shows up and does, a windmill or arguing about basketball or listening to a pod or listening to music or buying a t-shirt, whatever. Like, people need to find small pleasures. And we've been talking this whole episode about it, like cooking. When you're cooking, you're not thinking about life. You're thinking about, is this garlic golden enough? And that's what we're looking for. At least some moments where we're not locked into this unfathomable freaking predicament.
Unfathomable.
Freaking unfathomable.
It's past surreal.
It's so stupid.
It feels like we're under 1 million feet of water. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but I had a little bit of joy last night because there was a Mannie Fresh Scott Storch battle like we talked about. And I had a lot of opinions about this going into it. I love Scott Storch. He wrote a lot of great parts for some great songs, but Mannie Fresh is like, he's a movement, he's a vibe, he's a whole thing. Like,
is he a big mood?
He is one of the biggest moods. But I realize this is subjective, but I thought what he did with Cash Money Records and the Hot Boys and the Big Timers and all those great albums coming down from the South was like defined a decade of our lives. And shout out to Scott Storch, who had some of the most memorable parts in Dr. Dre songs and Eve songs, and he's so awesome. But Mannie Fresh was Paul Pierce in a dunk contest, man, against like like Nate Robinson. It's like, Nate's gonna win this, but Paul Pierce is an excellent player, and Mannie Fresh went down, man. He did not do well in this battle because he had contract issues with Cash Money, and it kind of prevented him from working with more people, but he still had hits with like the Neptunes and Young Jeezy, T.I., huge. And like, there's not many producers out there that I would place above Mannie Fresh, maybe DJ Premier, even though he reminds me of Rap Cops. He is defined an entire art form. So shout out to DJ Premier. But then it's just Mannie Fresh to me. And Mannie Fresh doesn't do well in that, like, Paul Pierce is kind of like a reasonably complete player, and I find Mannie Fresh is like an exceptionally complete artist.
Did Mannie Fresh soil himself out there in Paul Pierce fashion?
No, it was sweet. He took the L, and at the end he was like, we did this for you guys. Scott, I love you. Let's create a track together. Like, you did good, man. We did this. I hope you guys had fun. And I love them both because they all suffer from RFD. And to see them both smiling side to side, round face disease, to see them both smiling was like a real pleasure. And Mannie was a better contestant and a better man, in my opinion.
Mannie Fresh probably has an incredible amount of regional hits that aren't going to connect with a national audience 20 years later.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a fact, right? He wasn't working with Dr. Dre or Timberland or...
Lil Wayne, though. Juvenile.
For sure. No, I'm saying he has hits. But when he was working with that crew solely, I'm sure there's stuff that you could drop in New Orleans that would make people go crazy. But we didn't even hear about him until Ha. And Cash Money signed like whatever it was that, I forget the number, $60 million, $100 million deal, whatever the deal was with Universal. And that's when we started seeing Cash Money records coming up the East Coast. And you'd see them on, whether it was like BET or MTV. And Ha was the first one from Juvenile that we saw. But I'm sure there was so many records before then that were just bangers in New Orleans that we just never heard.
Yeah. I mean, even the hit song like Go DJ, Lil Wayne, when you listen to that song in 2020, like I did last night, late at 5 a.m. or something, that song sounds incredible. It sounds like the future. And this is me being an old dude, but if I was a record producer and I heard the track to Go DJ, I'd just be like, the streets aren't ready for this. This is just too advanced, you know?
Fresh.
Yeah, it's too weird and it's not going to hit right. That came out like 15, 16 years ago. It's just, I don't know, he's a visionary. So when he went up against Scott Storch, I'm like, he's going to get pummeled because Scott Storch knows how to do this. And Mannie Fresh is like, and this kind of plays into the thing I was trying to workshop yesterday about how these like nerdy guys, I mean, even Dr. Dre, like he was maybe the most forward behind the scenes guy we've ever had, but you know, he loves to talk about gear and has a studio and smokes something and like loves to talk about like sounds and drum machines. And that kind of mentality is really helping us in this time because there's so many resources and so much content that these guys can offer us.
I used to write for the magazine Scratch quite a bit.
Yeah.
Which was a hip-hop magazine that focused on the production side. And it was always interviews with producers, I guess reviews or you know, highlights of new products that were coming out, new drum machines. But it was very much like an industry trade publication for the general public, but about production. And it got granular. You could totally go in the weeds when you were talking with producers. And it was really fun to write for because rappers are charismatic and interesting, but they might not be great interviews. Producers are nerds.
Great.
And it was really fun to nerd out about rap and about songs and about sounds and samples and machinery because they would get so excited. It's really fun interviewing people who want to talk about the subject. And that was often not the case when you'd interview any kind of musician. But let's talk about your album. Like, well, I've talked about my album 20 times already, man. Okay, let's talk about your beef with so-and-so. I've talked about that 20 times. Okay, let's talk to an athlete. What do you think about last night? Dude, we're talking about basketball games.
Yeah.
I've done this again. But producers really don't get interviewed that much. So when you'd be able to talk with someone about their equipment and about what they did and how they manipulated a sample or what drum machines they were programming or their first, you know, SP1200 or MPC, they would be excited. So that was really fun. And you can tell these guys love music and have spent so much time in the studio playing with equipment and computers and keyboards. It's their shit and it's so pure. And I did a story for the New York Times about a year and a half ago where Timberland came and we went by Procel, which is a vintage store on Delancey Street that's run by our buddy. And
shout out to Brian.
Yeah, and Brian helped set up a bunch of vintage shirts in there that kind of went to different points in Timberland's career. So there was Jodeci shirts, there was Aaliyah shirts, and things like that.
Oh my God, I get
and
chills. I love that stuff. Yeah.
And having him just go through and talk about working with these people was so exciting. And the stuff that got published in the style section, there was a little bit of production there. But that wasn't the stuff that to me, and I think to him, was most interesting. That stuff didn't make the article. It was just nerding out about being in the studio with these people and like making specific beats. And Timberland there, he's got these really famous beatboxing abilities. And when he would be there, and you're just like,
oh my God, you just beatboxed. That was amazing.
Yes.
200th episode. Woo. Amazing.
Was
Thank
that
you for
Redaelli?
Wait, did Rozelle just log on?
But yeah, Timbaland is as good as you think at like creating beats out of thin air with his mouth. It was it was crazy. So yes, producers are really interesting and very special creatures.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Bow down to Timbaland. Holy crap.
Like I think he might be the best.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fight you on that. Unfucking believable artist. Yeah, man, and I'm trying to figure out what makes these people so interesting to me in a time like this. The people who kind of frame these ideas and kind of one step behind the curtain. And I'm just really interested in how they're kind of performing now or contributing. I find it to be really rewarding in a way that the most forefront artists and celebrities are kind of like have a more difficult interaction. And
it's the introvert's time to shine.
I don't know where that's coming from. There's a big idea in there somewhere, but even when we weren't in a pandemic and Jay-Z was rapping over these incredible songs, I would always look to the people making the back end of it and be like, whenever you're ready, I'd love to hear you speak about this, like this is very interesting. Like you've just given this guy this platform to do his thing. Like it's sort of like Mike D'Antoni. I'm like, I would love to sit down with Mike D'Antoni, man, and not interview him, but just like listen to him, just like be able to draw up plays. I think that'd be cool.
Other than being able to skip lines and get in clubs.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest perks of writing about basketball or writing about music was not the stuff that actually ran. You would get a money quote and you'd be like, oh, nice, that'll look good in print. But it was the sort of the killing time stuff when you could nerd out. That was always, to me, by far the most interesting, where you could sort of exchange ideas and see, you could confirm things. You could bounce, I remember interviewing MF Doom and we just were talking about like multiple syllable rhyming and like how it kind of came about. And I don't think any of that went in the article because who really wants to read about that? But I wanted to talk to him about like rhyming full sentences together.
And now the internet's a good place for that to live, right?
And this was in the print era where you didn't have 7,000 words. You could just run something in full. This is when you had to cut it down to 800 words. And you're like, we got to talk about his new album. We got to talk about this. We don't have time for you to bullshit with Rick Ross about, him listening to Hilltop Hustlers and watching like the Eric B. and Rakim video. And that's why he loved rap.
And maybe it's as simple as the content, the platform, because maybe these producers don't have to shout over a wall of PR and public relation, and they could just log on and be like, hey guys, if you want to check out how I write a song, I'll just create a beat in real time. And it's just because of the media, right? It's technology that's doing it. And I find that to be endlessly more interesting than a rapper just going along being a public relations a layup kind of.
And I guess I mistakenly took it back to rap because you were talking about Mike D'Antoni, and that was where I meant to go with this, but I just got...
Go off, King.
But it was that talking with him one time about the future of basketball for an article that was about Gallinari.
Yes.
He was out of the NBA at this point. This was before he came back as a coach. And I think he was just an announcer for like NBA TV or something at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, well, the future is definitely the stretch five. He's like, that's where basketball is going. And that had nothing to do with the article. It didn't get printed anywhere, but that was really fun to hear. And I think I've even referenced it on this show a couple times. But like Mike D'Antoni 5 years ago or whatever it was saying, oh, stretch fives, man, let's go.
Yeah.
And then now you see the Rockets basically doing it in a very weird way.
The post-shooting era.
Yeah. But all right, so basketball. There is a little bit of news. A little palace intrigue. Palace intrigue.
Yes.
Reportedly, the New York Knicks are interested in the king of carbs. Philadelphia 76ers general manager Elton Brand. This news was reported that Leon Rose, who's going to be taking the reins for the Knicks, wants Brand to potentially be the team's GM. Kuo, go off.
You're reluctant to screen grab it, man. Amazing. Like, from the NBA heavens blessed us with this nugget, this rumor mill nugget that set my mind spiraling. It would be sort of like if you stuffed a calzone into a giant dumpling and put it on top of pizza.
And what if you took this concoction and you piled it on a pancake? Or a crepe.
Mm-hmm. And then you wrapped it in like samosa dough and deep fried the whole thing.
Turned it into a burrito, yes.
We're going multi-carb verse right here. On my first reaction was amazing. This is going to give us amazing entertainment for at least the next year, possibly for the next 5 years. It firmly places the Knicks probably in relegation for longer than I had hoped for, but that's okay. If we get jokes out of it, I'm okay with more L's. But
I'll say this. Elton Brand is the right man at the right time for the right job. Bring him on, Knicks. Do whatever it takes to get Elton Brand into Madison Square Garden. If it means Mitchell Robinson, if it means giving up a first-round draft pick, do whatever is necessary. You need Elton in the building.
And I was trying to stand for him, so I went through his transactions in my head. And, like, I love the Jimmy Butler move. I thought that was a way to spend those assets. Mm-hmm. If you get Jimmy Butler, fair enough. You gave up a ton for him, but he's Jimmy damn Butler. Just re-sign him. Make sure you re-sign him. That didn't quite work out that way, but I like that inclination. Tobias Harris, didn't quite love, but very Knicksian, so that checks, check. Josh Richardson, a.k.a. the wet fettuccine, kind of not Knicksian, but I'd welcome that move on my team. I'm a fan of pasta and Italians. Shout out to our global friends out there who are struggling. And
wow, that was really emotional.
Thanks. You.
Go on.
I'm trying to do this, Ben. So is Elton Brand that bad is my question.
Well, who knows?
Who is Elton Brand is the right question. What point of view does he actually have?
No one knows.
No one knows.
My skepticism here about the veracy of this rumor is based on some behavior that the Sixers organization has exhibited over the last couple of years. And they seem to do these ham-handed leaks pretty routinely as a matter of strategy or team policy.
Where did this leak come from, first of all?
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
It came out of New York media, but that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You know, like Sixers ownership is all in New York. Like they all live here.
Yo, Fox is in New York. New York is weird.
But if you look back at these kind of rumors, the first one that comes to mind is right before the Sixers installed Brian Colangelo as the new GM, which led to the resignation of Sam Hinkie. There was a rumor that floated that the Nets were interested in Brian Colangelo. And in retrospect, the Nets were not interested in Brian Colangelo. It was a rumor that was floated to make the hiring of him seem like it was part of a...
Like a get.
It was a get, that there was league-wide interest in bringing him back as a GM, and the Sixers had landed him. I never heard anything else about this Brooklyn interview or this Brooklyn interest. It was never confirmed anywhere. It was just this rumor that floated around. And to me, this feels a little bit the same, where the Sixers have a meat shield, and he has faced withering scrutiny from the media and fans in a way that he had not prior, because of the Al Horford signing, because of the Tobias Harris signing, because of their use of assets, and because of the misshapen roster. If you are worried about replacing a meat shield. You have to make it seem as if the meat shield is A, actually making decisions, and B, a meat shield you want to keep around. So to me, being a cynic, the idea that the Knicks would want to hire away someone who's under contract is just designed to make it seem as if Elton Brand is making decisions and is a desirable GM to keep. That would be my cynical outlook. And we're talking about the same front office that announced that Nerlens Noel had been traded for a first-round pick when it was a fake first-round pick. It's the same front office that leaked they were looking for Daryl Morey when everyone in the world knew that there was no chance of hiring Daryl Morey away from Houston, that he would go and work for the people who had ousted his former protege. So like this follows in a pattern of probably fake leaks that seem designed to serve a certain purpose. So this to me is designed to protect the people behind the meat shield.
What are you talking about? New York has too many ventilators. There's just too many. They don't know that they're in warehouses ready to be used. But no, I agree. I asked where this leak came from because the way I saw it go down in real time on my Twitter feed was it was reported by a New York journalist that said Leon Rose had interest in Elton Brand, followed by a statement from Philly saying they were very happy with Elton Brand, even though the season up to this point was disappointing. So it led me to think that it might have been an April Fool's joke or Leon Rose actually had interest. But I was trying to figure out why. And that's where I went spiraling down into Elton Brand's carb-on-carb brain.
My thing is that the Knicks having interest in a GM who is under contract,
It's weird. It's such a weird leak.
who is Elton Brand,
Right. Is this
that's the
your kid?
kind of rumor you put out if you're the Sixers, because he's under contract. He's not going anywhere. You don't want to fire him. You want to make it look as if he is desirable and you're happy with him. He's not making decisions in Philly, man. Come on. Everyone knows that.
No, yes. But then why
And you're
would
also
Leon-
making it seem like he's responsible, that Leon Rose is impressed by what he's seen from Elton Brand.
If Leon Rose wants a meat shield, there's meat shields out there, man. Hire Chauncey Billups and just tell him what to do. You know? Like, Chauncey's ready for this job.
But, you know, if Elton Brand's contract was up, which it isn't, then this rumor is something you would not float if you were Philly. You float this rumor because he can't leave.
Right.
Anyway,
I
that's
don't
just my
understand.
opinion. I don't know either way. I'm just saying it doesn't make any sense that the Knicks would be interested in a guy who isn't making decisions, hasn't done a good job, and is under contract. None of those things add up.
I don't understand this rumor.
I understand it in the
No, no.
context I just told you.
No, I mean, as a Knicks fan, you know, like, speaking just on a side, I'm like, why would this even make sense? Even if it wasn't coming from the Knicks end. Let's say you're right, it's coming from the Sixers end. This is just implausible.
But that's what I mean about the same rumor of the Nets were interested in Brian Colangelo.
Right. But
Why would
yeah.
they be interested in him? They went and hired a Popovich guy. They clearly were not interested, or at least there was no reason to suspect that an organization that was shifting towards a highly progressive way of thinking was considering Brian Colangelo.
But to a casual fan, the Colangelo name has enough weight where you're like, oh, that's the basketball road. That's Team USA. We can understand that. Elton Brand.
I mean, we are dealing with an organization that uses leaks all the time. All the time. Remember, there was a leak that Jimmy Butler turned down their contract. That clearly wasn't true. That they gave him 5 years. The Sixers leak flagrantly.
It's so interesting how
I don't know why they do it. Just shut up.
it's just interesting how we get this nugget of news that involves the Sixers and Knicks. And your take is this is classic Sixers, and my take is this is classic Knicks.
I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe Leon Rose
no.
is like, Elton's my dude. I am saying Philly, for some reason, insists on doing this strategy of fraudulent leaks to make themselves look good. And they've done it over and over and over instead of just chilling out.
I mean, this is my Knicks take, but take out the fraudulent strategy and just be like, weird established names that people recognize. It's believable on the Knicks' part. Is all I'm saying.
I mean, just to be clear, all of those things I mentioned could be 100% true, but they don't feel like it, and they all follow a similar pattern.
Yeah, and also on the Knicks end, this is great. It just follows all the patterns of everybody involved. So it's kind of a joy to think about, and I've resigned myself many years ago to enjoying this as being a Knicks fan.
Look, if it's true, the Knicks need to go and get their man.
Stop it. Do not magical think this into existence. Do not secret this.
Bring in all the guys he works with over there. Like, that is a top-notch organization. Bring them all in. I think they do great in the Garden.
Never wish Isaiah Thomas #1 on you, man. Don't do this to me. It's foul.
Well, speaking of the Sixers, I'm always down to talk about them. Yesterday, we spoke a little bit about the Iverson versus Nash debate. And
it didn't get that much traction on the internet, but it
No,
was there.
no.
It was there.
No, and I was trying to think about why this one intrigued me and irked me in the way that most of these very bland, nothing to talk about discussions do. And part of it is that I'm an Allen Iverson stan. I am incredibly biased towards Allen Iverson, and I acknowledge this. But there was something that bugged me about this, and it was specifically the Nash-Iverson comparison that, rubbed me the wrong way. And I think it's that, in a word, I would say it is irresponsible. Because it's a rewriting of history in a way that mirrors the way that, black artists have often been subsumed by, pretty good white artists and, written out of the story. And, I don't have great examples of it, and I'm not saying this is intentional or even unintentional or the same, but it reminded me of that. And I was just uncomfortable with it. And it made me go back and kind of think about, who was Allen Iverson and what did he represent? And we touched on this, that the current version of him is not the best player in the NBA. It is a cultural figure who brought hip-hop and the streets and authenticity to basketball while chucking up a bunch of shots. And that's kind of the legacy of Allen Iverson. And that's just not true. So I want to talk about that. I don't want to get into Nash and how he was a bum for 4 years, a borderline all-star for 4, a bum for 3 years at the end of his career. I don't want to talk about that.
MVP twice. I love Steve Nash, but
Great player.
Yeah.
Just not on the same level. And I want to talk about Allen Iverson, though, because if you go back to 1998, that was Michael Jordan's final year in the NBA. They won a championship. Karl Malone was MVP. It had the iconic game-winning shot from MJ over Brian Russell. And then MJ retired. But in that season, if you look at the leading scorers in the league, MJ was number 1. You have to go all the way down to Allen Iverson. I believe he was 8th to find a guard. And then you keep going down, and number 16, I think, was Sam Cassell. Number 20 was Gary Payton. That was what the league was like. You had Jordan as a 2. You only had 2 guards in there. The perimeter players who scored a lot of points were Reggie Millers or Mitch Richmonds. They were shooters. They were very prototypical kind of Klay Thompson-y 2 guards. Guys who caught the ball, shot. They were your scorers. And then when MJ left, Allen Iverson ascended in a way that the league was really handed over to him. And that's what it felt like at the time. And people hated it. But Iverson then led the league in scoring. And you had to go down to Peyton and Marbury and then Kobe, who was 15th in the league. It was Iverson leading the league in scoring, taking over the reins from Jordan in a league that still was populated by guys like Shaq and Karl Malone and Shareef Abdul-Rahim. It was all big dudes. And Iverson, as the scorer distributor, was a completely new archetype coming out of a small ball handling guard who also put up a shit ton of points. Led the league in scoring. And he was the best basketball player on the planet for like a 4-year window. I'm not saying he was better than Tim Duncan, who arrived, or Kevin Garnett, who arrived, or those guys, but he was like the best player. And Shaq was, of course, dominant. But Iverson was known as the best player in the world at basketball for like a 4-year period. And to just diminish that as like a chucker who wore cornrows is like deeply messed up to me.
I mean, yeah, I went back and looked at some of the archetypes that you're discussing, and like the score distributor, and we remember, you're right, we remember Iverson as a cultural talking point as opposed to an on-court talking point too much. But I immediately think of Isaiah Thomas #1. Kevin Johnson was a beast.
Yeah, he was.
It's incredible. He averaged 20 points at age 22 in '89. He averaged 20 points and 12 assists. Like, the dude was incredible. But I think of him as like, oh, that weird mayor who didn't quite work out. I think there was some scandal involved. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a horrible person.
yeah. Great baller though. Isaiah Thomas #1, who I think is maybe the prototype of this Iverson, Kevin Johnson mold, had some gaudy statistical years. But, like, Iverson is clearly the better player historically, I think.
And it's also that Iverson was literally leading the league, and all these L words, in scoring. It's a little different from these guys who were score distributors. Iverson was the top scorer, who was also a ball handler distributor. And now if you look at the league, and you see Harden, and Lillard, and Curry, and John Wall, Westbrook, that's what we do now. You have your lead ball handler is often your team's best scorer and your team's best distributor. And Allen Iverson was that in a time when they didn't exist around the NBA. There just wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing, and this is always a question of influence versus performance. Allen Iverson was an extremely influential player, maybe the most influential player, maybe. And a lot of these young guys that you're talking about maybe won't credit him for their type of game, but they don't exist without him, right? Like, it takes generations to get to a Steph Curry, and I think Steph would acknowledge it, but he probably would acknowledge an in-between player in between Iverson and himself.
And there were guys like Michael Adams or Tim Hardaway Sr. There were scoring guards, and as you mentioned, Kevin
Michael
Johnson.
Adams. Yeah.
But Iverson was the one who led the league in scoring. And he was the face of the NBA for young people. And I just dislike the idea that we're writing that out of history and just making him like a kind of cool dude who was convinced people to get neck tattoos and was like Monte Ellis or some just chucking up shots. It's just not correct. He was the best basketball player on the planet for like 4 years. And then you had the whole wave of like do-it-all wings. And Kobe came up and McGrady came up and Vince
Scottie
Carter
Pippen
came
mold.
up. Yeah, and but they were more scorers and they were phenomenal. But that was the next sort of wave. Mm-hmm. But then after that was all the guys we just mentioned, like the Iversons, the combination scorer distributors. And Iverson got tons of hate for that. Oh, he's not a point guard. He's not a real pure point guard.
Selfish.
He's too small to be a shooting guard. Mm-hmm. And Larry Brown foolishly moved him off the ball. An insane decision by today's standpoints. Yeah. If you have James Harden, you say, okay, instead we're going to have Jarrett Jack walk the ball up the court, and we're going to put Harden on the side. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Jamal Murray's running the game. Like, no, Jokic is standing right there, man. Let him do everything.
Anyway, I can talk about AI all day. I was just thinking about that after our conversation. And I was like, what was his significance? Because yesterday I used a lot of the dribble bias and like the heart bias and those kind of phrases about him, which are true. But I had to go back and look at the league and remember exactly who he was. He was the best player on the planet in terms of being good at basketball, who led the league in scoring and created basically the scorer distributor archetype. freaking beast.
I think an interesting discussion to have from that jump is if personnel like Allen Iverson being born and playing in high school and college and being a number 1 overall pick, is personnel who you get as maybe like a lottery in terms of like the field of players who are growing up in America and the world, or is it influenced by the pop songs we hear now? You know, like who is a visionary and who is an evolution? And that's kind of what I love to think about, because you're right. We're seeing all these reverberations of Allen Iverson in today's game being used in a better way. And I wonder if it's because he existed or we were part of a natural evolution.
Yeah, and you can look at LeBron the same way, because there's a direct line between LeBron James and Ben Simmons and Luka Doncic and Giannis. And it's different amongst those 3 players because they're very different players. But Luka Doncic does play like James Harden for the most part. But that idea that a guy could be 6'7" and 6'8" or 6'10" or 7 feet tall and be your primary distributor, to me, that's because of LeBron. And when he came into the league, people viewed him as Magic Johnson, that he might score 20 a game and lead the league in assists, but he wasn't an alpha scorer. And LeBron changed that. He basically said, not only can you be an Allen Iverson scorer distributor, you can do it as a big dude. And who is LeBron's favorite player? Allen Iverson. But we now see LeBron, who's been in the league, I don't know, 15 years, 17 years? He's one of the, he's one of the oldest players in the NBA right now. And we can now see his impact. And to me, that's what it is. It's big dudes who can do it all. And that's just a different kind of player than we have seen for the most part. A guy who can lead your team in scoring and assist and rebounds and be an elite defender. Like, they're the best players on the planet.
Yeah.
They're better than the Iversons. They're better than those Westbrooks or little dudes. They are monsters.
I love watching LeBron James play. I don't think we'll ever see a player like him. He's just off the charts phenomenal. But you know what I was thinking in terms of like this multi-NBA versus like, let's say in AAU, we just have a ton of Jahlil Okafors. It's just like it's riddled with Okafors. And for the foreseeable like 2 or 3 drafts, you're just like, well, we got a lot of Tim Duncan-like players happening right now in America. And we're not really encouraging wings to pass anymore. And we're not really encouraging guards to score anymore. We're encouraging these big guys to do Tim Duncan-like things. And we get a scourge of Okafors in our pool of players. And we're forced to discuss them as if it was like an evolutionary thing, but it possibly is something you can willfully make happen or not happen. Do you know what I mean?
It's a nature nurture article or argument.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm going.
Like, do we have a scourge of Okafors because there are a bunch of plotting 7-footers with spin moves? Or was there an Okafor that succeeded and then a bunch of young guys with similar physical attributes began playing like an Okafor? Man, I think it's both.
Yeah, for sure.
LeBron, if LeBron was around 10 years earlier, they might have tried to convince him to play differently, but he probably wouldn't have, because LeBron is LeBron. I don't know how you could have put LeBron in a box, but maybe they would have.
I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they could have tried, but if LeBron was LeBron 10 years before, would he have been this singular talent that would have played that way and pushed things forward in that direction back then? Or would he have been like a Lamar Odom? Oh, he's big, he can handle the ball, but, he doesn't bring it up. Other people bring it up. Maybe sometimes off a rebound. But generally speaking, that's a big man. He gets in the post. Maybe so.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it as recently as Mark Jackson and the Golden State Warriors. And when Steve Kerr took over, he was like, yo, Steph, you should just be shooting more. And Steph transformed. And I always think about that. We were lucky enough to get someone with that vision. If we had stuck with Mark Jackson, maybe we don't get that type of superstar and that type of player, you know?
And to bring it back to the AI discussion, if you swap out Curry for AI, they're different style of players, we might have a totally different conversation, right? Because Steph Curry, this insane shooter, but if he's being double teamed and triple teamed and playing with Tyrone Hill, maybe we don't see this version of him that we have now been able to like marvel at for the last 5-6 years.
Totally.
Maybe he's just getting harried around the court and forced to throw behind the back passes to Matt Harpring.
Yeah. And we talk about this on Cookies a lot. It's like who suffered because their context wasn't appropriately constructed, right? Like who didn't thrive enough because people didn't know how to use them. And Iverson is that guy, right?
To me, he's a huge example of that. And I would have to think and see some other guys, but I remember Zach Lowe had an article, and I think he was talking about Trajan Langdon and just saying,
One and done
if
bus
Trajan
factory.
Langdon played now, his ability to really shoot probably would have made him an NBA player.
Interesting. He was drafted by the Cavs, I believe.
I think you're right. But
Didn't make it far.
yeah, but people weren't emphasizing shooting when he came into the league, and his lack of abilities in other departments, you know, made him a non-NBA player.
Yeah.
But that still applies to like a lot of guys, you know, from Dinwiddie to Covington. Maybe they all end up in the NBA eventually, maybe, or maybe they go overseas and start playing in Turkey or China or Israel, and they have a full career there and they're stars and they think about coming back to the NBA, but the money is good there. Right. They don't want to come back and be in the CBA or the G League. And we never have Dinwiddie or Covington in the NBA at all.
Yep.
It's certainly on the table.
Patrick Beverley. What do you think Stephon Marbury suffered from his era? He kind of emulated the Iverson model, right?
He was very similar. He didn't score quite as much, but he would have more assists. He was like a 20 and 10 points and assist guy. He was definitely the scorer distributor archetype at the same time as AI, for sure. I think he was a good player.
Yeah, I love him. Yeah, I think he's great. I think his career is so interesting, and I think he's one of the most interesting people. And sometimes I don't think he was used correctly in New York. But New York is behind the curve in a lot of regards, and I thought the pace of the game didn't help him. I thought his shot selection didn't quite help him, and I thought the pieces around him weren't perfect. Like Zach Randolph didn't really help his game.
I've played with some pretty good Brooklyn point guards. They're not that fun to play with. Like guys who play a lot like Steph. Ball dominant, barking at people.
Oh God!
Only
so
kind of
annoying.
pass the ball when they get in trouble. And then you're supposed to stick like a 14-foot jumper, and then you miss it, and they're like, ah.
In the cipher, on the bodega corner.
They're a thing. I get it. Like the Brooklyn point guard is a kind of obnoxious dude. And there's also a vein of crazy that ran through a lot of the New York players from that era.
I mean, shout out to Sebastian Telfair.
Lamar Odom.
I love him.
Meta World Peace.
Yes.
New York players were kind of on one during that period of time.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's just a coincidence in a small sample size, or there's something about being a schoolboy basketball star in New York that elevates you on a national level, that cultivates just an unhealthy worldview. I don't know.
It's Darius Rucker Park bias, right? It's like the way you were like taught to play and taught to interact, right?
It could be Lance. You know, I mean, I remember. let me chill. But,
Yo, chill. let me chill.
Let me say this. I remember getting videos that were being edited about Lance from people who were associated with well-known companies
Chill.
when he was in high school. And that was clearly against rules.
All good.
Yeah. I'm not incriminating anybody. It didn't. It's all.
Yep.
Some ancient past. I'm just saying, there's a difference in being a schoolboy star in New York, perhaps, than being one in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's a culture in New York that creates a certain type of point guard for sure, and that type of chip on New York City ballers' shoulder sometimes translates very well and sometimes does not. And I love Stephon Marbury.
Same. Also, a returning conquering hero. Greatest basketball player in Chinese league history comes back to help out with a bunch of like H95 masks.
King.
Tried
to make affordable shoes for people. Like, the guy's kind of been awesome.
King.
Yeah.
Shout out to Starbury.
Love Starbury. Way before the first episode of Cookies Hoops podcast, I was making bootleg Starbury jerseys or bootleg Starbury shirts because he was traded to the Knicks and I spent a little too much money from a scalper on the street to watch his first game, and the MSG company had no Marbury merchandise. I was shocked. I was ready to buy 4 jerseys and give them away to my friends. Nothing. So I made it myself.
What did you make?
It was dumb. It was like he has Coney Island's Finest tattoo, so it was kind of based off of that with a line drawing of him. Whatever. I was
very similar to the stuff you do today.
Oh, weird. I'm like Bernie. I've stuck to the same script for a long time.
So before we go, you've made some shirts to help out New York City restaurants in this time of peril.
Well, to be clear, we had done this before the virus hit through our good buddies, Carib Chan. And originally we wanted to create merchandise to help Chinatown businesses and maybe cultivate some sort of juice in the neighborhood again that was changing really fast. And I helped the guys at Jing Fong, a really famous dim sum spot with the big escalators, create merchandise in their vision to sell to, the hypebeast scene. And I think Mission Chinese made a shirt, and there's lots of cool items, even sculptures that they're selling to drum up just a vibe. And then this virus hit, and Carib Chan,
and obviously hit Chinatown
the
particularly hard.
Yeah, maybe they were already suffering before the lockdown or the quarantine, and because of a lot of information and misinformation, mostly misinformation. But we tried to, push these items to help them and create a dialogue for them. And shout out to Carib Chan because they recently expanded and dropped many more items from various restaurants that we support as a community. And I am limited to what I can do, but I know I can make things to look at and t-shirts to sell for people. So I am aggressively doing that in my daily life. So keep an eye out for more things. It's basically GoFundMe, but you get a t-shirt. So it's going to be $30 out of your hard-earned money, but I believe in it, so whatever.
I believe in it, so whatever.
I don't...
The Cookies Creed.
Is this... Do people have $30 to spend on a t-shirt? Maybe not. So if it's as
Look, I don't want to be here discouraging people from buying shirts or sweatshirts or hats that may pop up on their feed. It's not my job.
Is it not your job, or is it your job?
I don't know.
We're all trying our best, man, and just gotta not freak out.
Cookies.